Hello to all my people, and if you're watching live, checking us out on YouTube, or listening on your favorite podcast provider, you are most definitely my people. Welcome to another episode of Botched and Share Shots. We still have high hopes of delivering quality wrestling content, but if not, we'll sprinkle in some indie stars or topical humor, so we still get over. I am your host, a chef by trade and a mark by choice. I am the Will Gray, and tonight, my people, we have a very special guest. Joining us tonight, hailing from the great state of Louisiana, he is the Barker of the Bizzare. He is beyond the big top. Come on, my people, it's the carnival awaits. Tonight, we welcome Rika Wildlee. Rika, thanks for coming on chat about some wrestling. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I've awaited this moment for a while now and glad to be here.
I am super excited to dive right in. Let's talk a little bit about where your career started. Tell a little bit about where you started, where your training was, and what you were exposed to a little bit as a kid growing up, as a little clown in the circus.
Well, as I've said on many different interviews, I have fallen in love with wrestling at the age of 8 years old. I wanted to be under the spotlight. I wanted to be the one that got their name chanted as they held the championship above their head. And over time, it didn't matter how many different paths I took, every path led right back to this moment. So, as I got older and I pursued other avenues, I would say, the carnival always called me back home. And once I finally made it, the UWE opened their doors and graced me in with open arms. And I got trained under the legendary Texan warrior, Dapper Dan. Dapper Danny Davis gave me all the in-ring knowledge that he had, all the psychology of the business that created the Barker of the Bizzare that you see before you today.
So speaking of UWE, you have a huge matchup coming up against Xavier Storms for the light heavyweight title. What's on your mind as you prepare to be crowned the top light heavyweight in UWE?
Me and Xavier have talked about this moment since the day he stepped foot inside the UWE. I saw great potential in such a rising talent like Xavier Storms. And once he conquered that mountaintop and I sat back watching him ascend to heights that I could only dream of, I knew that it was my time to shine. I knew that the carnival's lights shine bright for a reason, and there was only one that needs to be taken and have their ticket granted, and that is the current light heavyweight champion of the UWE, Xavier Storm.
So when you're preparing for a match like this against Xavier and you have the amount of time that you have to build up to it in your rivalry, what's something you look forward to the most about stepping into the squared circle against somebody who's such a bitter rival like Xavier?
Well, I look at all of his matches, I look at all of his promos, and I pick them away piece by piece by piece. So by the time we both stand across the ring from each other, I've already written the story that we're both playing part in. The match is over before it begins, and he knows it's true.
Okay, so obviously you're a very charismatic person outside the square circle, but when you get inside the squared circle, what part of you do you turn up to 11 most to prepare and for an opponent?
There is only one thing that I allow to take the forefront when Rika Wildlee is being cheered on by the fans. And that is when I am in the center of the squared circle. Business is business. Winning is all that matters. Ascending to the mountaintop where the gods before me have set. That is the only thing I'm worried about. And once I conquer my opponent and I take him back to the carnival and I put him on display for all the sideshow freaks to enjoy, everyone after that point will know what it means to step inside the ring with the barker of the Bizzare.
As you continue to grow as a professional wrestler, especially in your region and territory, what is your favorite thing about being a pro wrestler in 2022?
Well, my favorite thing about being a pro wrestler in the time of professional wrestling that we live in is I get to be a true character. There's not many of them left in the wrestling world. There's a lot of generic Joe Blows out there, but there's not many true characters. I bring the gimmick back to wrestling. I bring the charismatic enigma, Jeff Hardy type stuff back to professional wrestling. He is a true inspiration in this modern time. But me, I want the independents to know that it's not only about the in-ring ability. It is about the captivation of the fans inside and outside the squared circle.
A lot of people have compared you inside the ring, the way you wrestle, the way you work, and the way you move, to somebody like a Jeff Hardy or a Darby Allin. What does it feel like to be able to compare to a classic wrestler like Jeff Hardy from the Attitude Era and one of the top stars in AEW today?
It is a true honor to be compared to two such talents as Jeff Hardy, who carried the Attitude Era as far as Extreme went, and now you've got Darby Allin, and you've seen what him and Jeff done recently. He is the new modern day extremist, and it is an honor to be compared to such talents as those two.
When you're working in the ring and the spot calls for it, and you're going through some of these spots, speaking of a Jeff Hardy and a Darby Allin match, do you feel like those spots are facilitated for the story and should be part of it, or do you think they're there for the pop of the crowd or the instant gratification?
Well, see, that's where a lot of fans differ. But there is no story without a pop of a crowd. If the crowd is bland, if the crowd is not making any noise, is not behind one of the characters, is not behind the heel or not behind the face, then there is no story. So with that said, the spots make the story. The big spots, the small spots, the locks, the holds, all of it creates the ultimate legacy that we get to put on before you. Every move, every lock, every spot is a brushstroke on the masterpiece that we're creating before you. So with that said, it's all one and the same, in my opinion.
So if the collar and elbow is the once upon a time of your story, what would you say the end would be? How would you define what makes the finish unique for Rika Wildlee?
The finish is explained through emotion. Once I decide to hit my signature, which sets up for my finishing move, which is called the big top, you can hear the announcers. You can hear the announcer say, "There goes Rika Wildlee. He's setting up the big top." And everybody knows once the big top is set up, the carnival awaits. That's right.
So specific to your finisher, do you think a protected finish is something that's important to you as you carry through the lineage and through your styles when you wrestle? Do you save your finisher specifically for those moments when you know it's going to be able to be handled and protected, so you keep it rolling, so that momentum keeps going with it?
Well, there seems to be a fine line in which you're talking about. There's moments in time where you have to grow, that you have to go and move on to a different aspect of your character. And with that said, around that time is the time for a finishing move to quote unquote be buried. And I'm okay with that. I really am. For the first while, as your moves are new to the crowd and new to the fan base and everything, I think it should be protected for the first while, until you really get a following behind what you're trying to do. But once you decide to elevate onto the next level and do something different with your character, it may be the time to try out a different kind of finishing move. So yes, it will be time to kind of put that one to the wayside, let a couple people kick out of it. You know what I'm saying? Kind of let them get over with that. That's the way I look at that.
Okay, so I'm going to go into this one. This is going to be kind of a left field kind of question, okay?
Go for it.
Doink the Clown, Psycho Clown, Murder Clown, Super Muñeco, Who is your dream big top tag team partner?
To be honest, I've never really thought about it. My biggest thing with doing this gimmick is to try to steer away from them saying you're just another ICP ripoff or saying you're just another wannabe Joker. Because I promise there's a lot more to Rika Wildlee than both of those places combined. But with that said, if I had to choose one of the ultimates, I would have to say Doink the Clown, strictly because it would be amazing to have that nostalgia with such an amazing talent who showed me how to be a clown character. You know what I mean?
Not to mention the fact that Matt Osborne gets a lot of heat for what happened outside the ring, but inside the ring, he's one of those guys that was a killer worker for the most part. He just catches a lot of heat for how much trouble he got in outside of the ring.
Not to bring up a sour subject, but there was a certain Canadian crippler that's felt the same way. Amazing worker, but gets a lot of heat outside.
There seems to be a few of those people on that list. Okay, I've got another question for you, completely unrelated to wrestling now. Do you prefer Pennywise as Tim Curry, or do you prefer Pennywise as Bill Skarsgård?
Tim Curry all day long. Tim Curry all day long. That's what I grew up on. I'm a huge Tim Curry fan in almost everything he's played in. You know, from Rocky Horror Picture Show to It, you know, to Clue. I mean, I'm a very, very elaborate Tim Curry fan. I have no problem saying that Pennywise Tim Curry version is definitely my favorite.
Okay, so professional wrestling in its earliest incarnations can be dated back to the carnivals, to the big tops. They were sideshows. Do you feel like what you do as Rika Wildlee, do you feel like you're trying to take wrestling back to its roots and the originality of what the sport was?
There needs to be kayfabe. Okay, people don't understand really what that means anymore. There's a whole generation of wrestling fans who have lived vicariously through the internet and has stuff spoiled for them time and time again. And it's up to people like me, the true characters in the professional wrestling world, to show them that there's a lot more than a tweet here and a tweet there saying that I'm going to whip this one or do this to that one. I want to teach you that there are such things as storylines that can be kept under wraps and can be kept behind closed doors when they need to be, because everything we do is magic. And the carnival shows that each time.
So when you look at some of the greatest workers of all time, speaking on kayfabe, you look at somebody like The Undertaker. How do you feel about somebody who took kayfabe so seriously that it took 30 years of history before we found out who Mark Calloway, the person, was?
That is the reason I fell in love with wrestling. Being able to see characters like that develop from nothing, develop from literally nothing, and make a whole entire world and have a whole entire following behind them for 30 years. That is almost impossible, let alone to keep people in the dark through an entire technological advancement that we went through during his time as a professional wrestler. It is insane to see and to have experienced that as a child, watching Mark Calloway, watching The Undertaker and Kane and all of their stuff. You know, it's crazy. I am very, very impressed with what he done, and it only inspires me more to keep that legacy living on.
When you watch wrestling as a fan, not specifically in the perspective of being Rika Wildlee, what is your favorite thing to watch in wrestling? What is that one thing that still makes you pop as a fan?
It doesn't matter what match I see Eddie Guerrero in. He will always be my number one, just because all around the table, the charisma, the ability, the agility and ability to move and still play strong style. There's, in my personal opinion, no better wrestler than Eddie Guerrero.
When you're
And
speaking,
he
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
he is the one that every match I see him in, it takes me back to being a child and aspiring to be even somewhat great like him.
So, speaking on two great luchadors, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, a lot of people discuss those two at the top of their list. One of the reasons why you said Eddie was top tier was because he could do all of it. He could talk, he could work, he had the charisma, he had everything building behind him. What makes you think somebody like Eddie Guerrero is that one echelon above somebody like Rey Mysterio? What's the biggest differences you see between two of those legends?
The only difference between their two, because I've watched a lot of matches that they've had in the past. I've watched a lot of different styles that they went through, but the only upper hand that Eddie Guerrero ever had on Rey Mysterio is the fact that he was a tad bit bigger and could do more powerhouse stuff. As far as the lucha style, as far as the charisma and everything that they had going on, both had the agility factor, both had all of it. But it was Eddie Guerrero that also could play that strongman style. And that's what got him over more, in my personal opinion.
So when you watch these classics, do you pick and choose and adapt based on the people that you feel like inspired you to become who you are? Are you picking pieces of Eddie Guerrero? Are you picking pieces of Rey Mysterio? Are you picking pieces of Jeff Hardy?
If you don't, as a professional wrestler, with everything that has went on inside the wrestling world, there's nothing that almost hasn't been done. So if you don't go back and study some of the greats, then you're really, really gypping yourself, because those are the manuals that we learn from. Those are the guidebooks in which we study by. So yes, most definitely, when I see some of their matches, I'm going, you know what? I could probably incorporate that into something I'm doing, and it would. A lot of people see it as stealing their stuff. I see it as paying the ultimate homage, keeping their legacy alive.
So recently, with the implementation of WrestleMania times and some of those, you see a lot of celebrity encounters in professional wrestling. Do you think there's a proper way to bridge the entertainment side of sports entertainment and wrestling without being somebody like a Snooki, or I would say Logan Paul, but he surprisingly showed out this past year. So it's hard to give heat to a guy that could work the way he did. But do you think there's a good way to bridge that celebrity and professional wrestling encounter while encompassing the sports entertainment as a whole?
Yes. Don't focus on the money. That's the way to do that, because most celebrities that come upon wrestling nowadays, you can tell it's a very high list celebrity, and it's all about the paycheck. They come out there, they do their little spot, and then they roll out. Excluding Logan Paul, just like you said, he did show out at WrestleMania. It was pretty impressive. But most of the celebrities that they've had, and I would say the past decade, has all been about the money. Once they start doing stuff like from the Attitude Era or from old school WCW, when they had Dennis Rodman come on there, and you could tell Rodman was genuinely excited to wrestle, and team up with Macho Man and all them, and then DDP and Malone and all that stuff. That was the heyday of celebrities truly enjoying what they're doing when they come upon the wrestling show. Go. Let's do it. Favorite movie of all time? I would have to say Lords of Dogtown. Oh, favorite song. Oh man, that's a hard one. Um, Recent favorite song is gonna have to be Change by Crazy Town. And don't knock Crazy Town. Crazy Town is a damn good band. Oh, Your Town.
Nashville, Tennessee.
Because the carnival is always in your town.
Who is your favorite superstar?
current current superstar.
Current superstar or from your childhood, you can pick.
Oh, well, aspiring as a child, I would have to say Shawn Michaels or Jeff Hardy. But as I've gotten older and I've seen what I've seen, I'm always gonna have to go Eddie Guerrero.
And what is your favorite finisher that isn't yours?
Favorite finisher until it got buried, the Canadian Destroyer.
What makes you think a move like that has become so regular? I'm going to digress for a second in the conversation since I've already asked your 5 rapid fire ones. Things like the super kick and the Canadian Destroyer once upon a time were very protected finishers, and now it seems like they get thrown into every match no matter what. Do you think there's a time and a place for a move like that?
Most definitely. Most definitely. That is a end all be all. The Canadian Destroyer, like, you should not get up from that. That is one of those moves that looks so devastating that if you were to pull that move off, that it should be the, wrap up the match, it's done. Especially the out of nowheres ones they do. It's so sporadic and so off the cuff. It's like, how in true reality, how do you kick out of that? But same way with the super kick, back in the day, Shawn Michaels kicked somebody, it took their whole face off. They were done. But now they have super kick parties where it's 20 people getting kicked in the face, and it's just one of those things that there should be certain moves that stay protected, I think.
Completely agree. All right, Rika, this is the point in the show where I give the guest the opportunity to plug your stuff. Tell everybody where to find you and what you have going on.
All right. This weekend, June 11th, in Center, Texas, I will be going against Xavier Storms for the United Wrestling Entertainment Light Heavyweight Championship. And yeah, Texas, it's gonna be a barn burner. But before that, if you want to find me, you can like my stuff here on Twitter. You can follow me here on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Facebook. You can hit me up on Google because all my stuff pops up there if you need to find the link. Or you can go to ProWrestlingTees.com, type in Rika Wildlee, and get you some Rika Wildlee merch. Completely up to you. But by the next time you see me on screen and this beautiful mug graces your presence, I'll have a little gold on my shoulder.
Rika Wildlee, I appreciate you stopping by and chatting about some wrestling. Now, as we close another episode of Botched Bots and Share Shots, I want to take a minute and thank you for listening. Remind you all to go wherever you do anything on the internet, Facebook, Instagram, iHeartRadio, Spotify. You have all the options. Like, heart, subscribe, unsubscribe, then subscribe again, leaving a comment telling me how great I am or how terrible I sound. Either way, it helps the algorithm, helps me find new listeners. Remember, go to patreon.com and donate to the Smacked Raw Podcast Network. You get some fantastic swag. I get some fantastic guests. It's a win-win. As always, I'm your host, The Will Gray. Thanks for stopping by and listening, my people.
Later, guys.